Okay.
All right, it is 6:30 on Thursday, July 15th. The Halliwell Review Committee is now in session. That feedback from,
Is that everyone's mics off? Are everyone's mics off?
yeah, well, with the exception of mine.
Mine's off. Okay.
All right. First item on the agenda is roll call. Mr. Curtin?
Here.
Mr. Halliwell?
Here.
Mr. Corvo? Here. Mr. Mayo? Here. Mr. Simpkins? Here. And Mr. Nigerian and Mr. Savini are absent tonight. Item number 2 on the agenda is review and approval of draft meeting minutes from our July 1st, 2021 meeting. Give everyone a minute to look those over. If no one has any comments, we'll look for a motion to approve. Motion to approve by Mr. Mayo. Do I have a second? Second from Mr. Halliwell. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Next on our agenda is for discussion, review, and action, an update from Weston and Sampson. We have with us today Carolyn Wells, the project manager, and I'll pass it off to you.
Okay, great. Should I go to them?
You can go to the picture or you can sit here if you'd like, whatever's more comfortable for you. Yeah.
Is this on?
Yes.
All right, updates. So I apologize because we don't have a draft report ready, which I had hoped to have ready at the end of last month. We have a number of missing pieces, specifically the electrical. We lost some employees and gained a lot of work at this time. And summer, we just found like we have a lot of competing projects right now. We will likely have to get back out on site as well, not just for electrical, but also to pick up some loose ends of the remaining buildings that weren't assessed before. So we have assessments on 10, 11, and 7, and I can give those draft reports probably late next week. They'll have some gaps, obviously, with electrical if we can't get to it that quickly. And we're also initiating site condition assessment next week. We needed the perimeter survey to initiate that work. So we should be on site, if not next week for that, the week after. And then once we go through the charrette process, we'll be able to do some of the finishing up work, like our market analysis and feasibility analysis. And also we'll have a better understanding of transportation needs, so we can look at ingress and egress and those issues. So are there any questions on the assessment?
I think the only thing that I would need to ask if you knew offhand, if there were any during the assessment of the buildings that have been complete, if there were any kind of noteworthy things that might stick out in your mind.
No, actually, I mean, what was noteworthy is that, you know, there was expected wear and tear. There were original materials which were somewhat suspicious, perhaps for asbestos. There were remnants of mold that had been dealt with already, but there were no red flags that anybody said, "Oh my God, nobody can enter this building right now." It seemed a lot of it seemed cosmetic. Now, there are some recommendations for additional assessment, particularly in areas that weren't immediately visible. So I'm sure that there'll be another phase to that.
So now you mentioned that the electrical, you're hoping to get that done the end of last month. Do you, what type of time frame are we looking at as to when that will be done?
I have a meeting set up for 10 o'clock on Monday morning to meet with the team. And I hope to have a better understanding of exactly what window we're looking at. Right now we normally have 6 people operating. Right now we only have 4. So it's just a matter of getting somebody in. So I'm sorry for that.
I think probably what would be helpful, once you do have your meeting, if you could send me an updated schedule.
Yep.
And then I can distribute that to the members.
Yep, I already have one working, and I'll just confirm it and send it on.
Perfect.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, great. In front of you, I put in, just as an internal agenda, this will be just for us, so just for the basis of talking through what we want to see in the charrette and what outcomes we hope to have. So this is on Saturday morning. Now, we had scoped out, I believe in our contract, like 2 hours, and to be frank, I don't really see that as adequate time to really get everything that we want to get done there, so we're gonna have to, I think, be thoughtful about it, let's put it that way. So for that reason, at the bottom of this agenda, I have sort of a tentative schedule for that morning, and let me just run through it, and then you can give me your thoughts or any corrections. So I'm thinking that it's hot, yeah, I don't know, so it'd be nice to get people out early when it's a little bit cooler, somewhere in the 8:30 to 9 o'clock range. I'm thinking particularly at the key buildings, 10, 11, 7, and then also key points within the site. We can have display boards with some general thoughts, some general ideas, some obviously a site map and where this particular, like this is part of the site, what could be there. I don't know how far you want me to go into like telling people this could be, you know, a pollinator garden, this could be, you know, I don't want to leave people, but at the same time, the whole point of the whole event is to get people thinking and contributing. So we're really kind of tapping into people's creative minds here. So the idea is that they can sort of self-tour, like we'll have, I will be on site, it's just a matter of my other staff members getting here from Boston area. They can go to the different points on the map, read the boards, get some ideas and think about what they'd like to see, something totally different maybe. And if you all are on site, you can certainly help facilitate people's discussion, mill around, be hosts, ushers, whatever you need to be. Obviously, we don't want people walking around too much, you know, we don't want any hazards, but you know, just hit the key points so that they have an idea of the overall site. Then they would come back to the central site, and this is something we need to talk about, because I think we had said that we could not use the buildings, right? So we have to be outdoors in some way. We'll have to think about that, particularly in terms of the weather. If there's a part under the shelters or under the walkway that makes sense, then maybe that is something to look at. We would do a brief presentation to get everybody back in and getting them understanding the goals for the day, the goals of the overall project, and you know, some things that they might have thought about on their tour, and we're kind of bringing them back in the fold. Another question I had is, do we have the capacity to have any refreshments, whether that be just coffee and juice and Dunkin' Donuts or something? Do you think that's worthwhile?
I would have to talk with our administrator and the finance director to see what kind of monies may or may not be available.
Okay. Yeah, and depending on what our capacity is, I you know, that would require tables and such. So just a brief, just kind of 10 minutes or so, just to get people kind of thinking, orienting, figuring out where they're gonna be. And then we'll have a 30-minute discussion on programming for the site. And I reviewed the survey responses that you got. You know, quite a diverse response there. Really thinking about uses at the site before we think about design. So what do people want to see? What functions should these buildings hold? Without thinking about any particular site at this point. Kind of grabbing that. So 30 minutes of that. Then we can take a 15-minute break. People can continue to think and talk if they like. And then we head into a site and it should say building, a design discussion. And that would be 45 minutes. So we would be thinking about the site overall, and people, I imagine, and this is where I'm envisioning it, that we would have tables set up with the overall like, aerials of the site and markers and, you know, notepads and all sorts of things for people to be creative with, because people do like to sit around and really think about what could be at the site. And then we'll have maps that'll mark out wetlands. We won't have them delineated, but we still kind of have a good idea where they are. And so people can really think about site-wise what they would like to see. Then we'll go into the design of really the main buildings, I think make the most sense, 10 and 11. The other ones are sort of ancillary to those larger buildings. And thinking about what people would like to see as amenities inside the building. So that could be flexible space, it could be kitchen space, we don't know. But it's really getting people to think about that. I also think that we should have idea cards at each site. Not everybody likes to speak up, not everybody likes to engage. So it'll give people the opportunity to jot down some thoughts and notes and observations as they go through the process. And then we'll have a brief closing presentation, no more than 10 minutes. Basically, a thank you for everybody's time and explanation of what next steps the process will take and how their input will be incorporated. And also, if we want, we can also go over the survey results. I didn't want to do that on the front end because I didn't want to necessarily, get people thinking along certain lines. But I have a feeling that people always like to hear what other people say. So maybe some, reporting out and that sort of thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Bob. I got a question. Why can't we have the meeting inside the cafeteria? I thought it was an insurance issue, which I thought was being resolved.
It's still in progress. It's not as easy of a fix as it was originally thought to be. So I know Paul, the administrator, and Ray have been working with the insurance to kind of get that squared away, but I don't think it will be resolved within the next week.
Only because if it's a bad day, rainy wise, problem.
So the upfront kind of idea generation session and getting feedback, I don't know about you guys, but it feels like we've done a lot of that work already in the survey results. And I don't know if it would make sense to kind of lead with that, to kind of, put the survey results up front first. I don't know what you guys think, but I feel like, if we're working with a 2-hour block, maybe trimming back that kind of work that might a lot already been done with the survey and getting community feedback. And bringing that up front to shape the discussion, like here's what we heard. And starting with that and then kind of narrowing it down to here's what we heard. And I think people want to know like what's realistic and what's not. I don't know, that's just kind of how my mind goes. I don't know what you guys think.
No, I agree wholeheartedly, because we're playing to our strength. We went through the effort to send it out. All along, we told the public that we are a vehicle they're going to drive. So I think, because I was leading to this in a tangential way, but I strongly endorse beginning with, this is what we know you said you wanted, those of you who may, most likely, the vast majority of the people in attendance may have filled out the survey. We're willing to bet in the 90 percentile because they're engaged and they're involved. But my first question, if I were walking in and I weren't on this committee, would be I would want you to tell me in order of priority and functionality, where is each building? Is it a 5? We had mentioned this in our meetings. Is it a 1? Is it a 5? Meaning, ability to make it code compliant, versatility of design, just so that we're not fixating on, building 12 is a small classroom. Define it as not probable or less probable. And if 10 and 11 are going to be the focal point because they're the largest structures, probably also indicate to those who have no knowledge, are they viable? Can we make them viable? Can we make them code compliant? And do we think that they offer us flexibility to achieve what you've already told us that public you think you want? Multi-use senior center, youth center, multi-purpose type thing. So I think we want to go with our strength, which is you've already told us to meet with public. You've given us some input. You guys have done a degree of your work to determine what you can speak intelligently on and what you can't. So,
That's right. I think it's, Chris, how many survey results do we have?
441.
So, you know, we have 440 people who shot the room, right? And,
Yeah,
you know, the kind of, you know, utopian, what could be done. And you know what's the reality, right?
yeah.
So it's like, how do you bring people conceptually from?
Yeah,
what's in it?
I have no problem with that. I just didn't want to front load it if you didn't want to.
Yeah, I think just shaping people
Yeah.
into like, and then maybe presenting a couple different scenarios along the way. You say, if you're thinking, you know, you want to reuse everything that's here, you know, here's the likelihood of that, right? And it's probably not likely, you know, if some of the buildings could be incorporated into something else, you know, that's a scenario, or you start from scratch.
Right, and you know, the only thing I would say to that is that in these sort of, I mean, first of all, a true charrette is something that's usually multi-day all day. So what we're doing is something that's much smaller. And so I guess in order to get results that are valuable, I would say we need to refine what we're looking at. So I guess I don't want to give everyone the full menu of every building because, you know, I mean, really, aren't we just looking at the big buildings for major public programming? And then everything else can be accessory to that or not, depending on its functionality. I mean, that's where I'm coming from, but you know, you're in the committee, so.
I am a little hesitant because in my mind, with the use of the property, we've been looking at, or we've been tasked with looking at, are the buildings salvageable, are they not? And I think if we start to narrow people in on how can we reuse the existing buildings as they stand, that's going to limit us on the programming aspect of what people would like to see. Because those buildings we're limited by use by those buildings. It could really kind of hinder some of the activities that the town would like to see. And I would say that, you know, we focus on more bigger picture items than and not the immediate use, but more the 5, 10, 15 years down the road and the ultimate future goals of this project, as opposed to, okay, well, it's been very clear that we're going to use the building 10, the cafeteria building, for, you know, once we get all those issues with the town trust and the insurance all squared away, that building is going to be used. But how feasible is it for us to be using it if people want a swimming pool down there? You know, I just want to make sure that everyone has kind of the freedom to think outside of the boxes that are already there. Because what I don't want to see happen is a situation where we're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
So if I can say something real quick. So I think the issue, and one thing that that really intrigued me about working with Weston and Sampson is that you're not from Rhode Island. And I think that's a very positive, because particularly in Rhode Island, I find that although we're a unique state, when it comes to projects like these, we tend to be very much in the box. And to have a firm outside of Rhode Island to kind of give us a breath of fresh air, I think it would be beneficial if Weston and Sampson could come in and maybe even share ideas of other cities and towns that you've helped that have had maybe a similar plot map or survey, and actually, you know, create a picture so that people can actually understand, as opposed to just saying, oh, we want trails, or we want, you know, a pool, or we want a senior center. I mean, we know that eventually we will head towards some of those things. But I think, you know, I think if we focus, so the goal is not only to have a community center for us to use as residents, but also to attract other people to it. For multiple reasons, a revenue standpoint, obviously that will attract more people moving into the town. It'll retain people from leaving the town, whether they retire, the goal is to still have them stay here. So I think if we can provide something that's very unique, I know for myself, when I travel outside of Rhode Island, I travel outside of Rhode Island because I don't want to feel like I'm in Rhode Island when I'm on vacation. And so when you go and travel certain areas, you get this idea like, geez, I just wish we could have what they've done here in Rhode Island. And so I think I think if we keep that focus of being unique and creating something, because we have the opportunity to create something that no other community has.
Yeah, Jeff? To reiterate, I think that's nail on the head, Steve. Kind of like in real estate, right? Comparables. If you look at what other similar communities, similar in size, demographic, all the way around, if you have done projects for similar communities and what you've done, some thoughts and ideas around that, because this is brand new to us. People have some great ideas. We put forth survey and all kinds of opinions, thoughts, but it'd be great, I think, as part of, I don't know, site design discussion. Weston and Sampson gave some examples of similar communities and what people have accomplished elsewhere.
Mr. Chairman, just following up on your point that you made prior. Well, I think everyone would embrace the clean slate mentality, look at it as a canvas. But the other reality is the one that we kind of dodge and we don't really focus on, and that is money, the dollars and the cents. We've got structures there. And I think most people affiliated in any way with construction would agree that short of some extraordinary event, and we were told that there's nothing earth-shattering about the existing conditions, it's going to be less expensive to try to incorporate a few of the larger structures into some final design. And of course, if the people are willing, and we all have to use that ugly word, but if the people are willing to pay for a bond, then yeah, you can carte blanche, do whatever you want. But we don't need that cold splash of water to realize that that is not going to be received by everyone in this community in the numbers that would be required to approve a bond issue. So I think you need to give them, they're intelligent, they're going to see, they're going to look at the structures, and even someone with no experience in construction realizes that that's sitting there. Why can't we fix it? Or can we, that's why they're asking the professionals, can we fix it? And if we fix it, what can we do within your design professional minds? And then we can contrast that and say, yeah, we're not ruling out just blowing everything up. But you got to realize that if we blow everything up and just bring in the dozers, you're starting from square one. You have no value other than the land. And it's going to be a construction. It's not going to be anything else. So the numbers are going to jump. So I think we just have to be careful, and we don't want to lead them where they don't want to be led. But we also don't want to shy away from the reality that if we're going to go high on wish lists, you, meaning us, the community, is going to have to pay for it. And if they're not prepared to do that, then we need to try to make as many structures on site work. I'm not trying to be negative, but we need to face the reality of, and maybe we have to hear it from our people. Maybe our people have to say, darn it, it's been long enough. We're willing, go spend the money. Or they may say, look around, we really can't afford to spend any more than we need to. How do we make this work? So, now I'm
I could
giving
add though, they could be incremental about it. So they could say, this is what we want for the next 2 to 5 years. And then over time, maybe, our financial situation, or maybe we'll rent out some of this space and we'll have, some money. There's a lot of other things at play.
and your master plan could evolve that.
Correct. You could have a 20-year plan for the site, and that way nobody's burdened suddenly. So,
Yeah.
Mine's
and-
open.
If we do have it within our ability, in our scope, we have three options to kind of identify. Whether it be a combination of keeping the buildings and altogether, bulldozing some and leaving some, or starting with a clean slate. So we do have that's part of what Weston and Sampson is going to be looking at, is giving us three options. And I think we can, after our public charrette, we can pose those questions as you've identified, and really take a look and see what the appetite is for how we address what's there and what's not.
So just looking at the initial survey results, the vast majority of people are not thinking in terms of buildings, like the buildings that are there. They're thinking in terms of what they want functionally from the site. And I don't think that they're particularly interested in, you know, whether that fits into 11 buildings or 3 buildings or what. I'm getting the sense, you know, looking through the initial 400 plus responses, that, you know, people want these certain things. They don't necessarily care how that fits into the existing structure. That might be very different on the day of the charrette when they're looking at them and they think, oh, you know, that building would be a great food pantry, or, you know, the yoga studio or something. But I think by and large, they're kind of thinking big at this point. And I definitely agree with you, Robert, that, you know, at some point we have to, you know, consider what are the monetary restrictions and, you know, all of that. But I think, like Jeff said, you know, Weston and Sampson is here to help us figure out what is that balance, and, you know, what are the options. Here's the cheap option, here's the more expensive option. My sense is that this discussion on the 24th is really about idea generation and having a conversation about what people want from the site. Part of that might be people saying, well, I don't want to spend a lot of money, whatever you do, you know, that might be one of the points that somebody comes to it with. But I think we just kind of need to keep it high level and really, you know, have an open mind rather than trying to lead people into certain restrictions right out of the gate like that.
And I think we will have at this point, right now, tonight, we don't have a full assessment of the building. So it's hard for us to really understand what needs to be done to these buildings. Because I mean, if there are parts of the building where it's suspected hazardous materials, that's going to be a big ticket item that we need to remediate. If there's, you know, right now with the cosmetic issues, you know, there could be some easy fixes with that, but then, you know, what happens when we start opening up walls and we find things? That's going to be another big thing. Because I've come across plenty of times where the dreaded change order comes into play with contractors, because we say we're going to demolish a wall, and then they start taking it down, and then, oh my goodness, there's all these problems. So I think we need to wait for that assessment too, and also be able to share it with the public so that they can, you know, logically analyze what they see and what they read, because it's going to help in deciding what we do with those buildings.
I think one thing we just gotta keep in mind is, in the past, like, school department moved out of there for a reason, right? And they spent, you know, X amount of dollars to move into NCS. I think we gotta keep that in the back of our minds as we start thinking about, you know, what's salvageable versus what isn't. Because I think people would say, hey, wait a minute, you know, if this was salvageable, why did we spend money to move into, you know, NCS, and why are we doing this now? But I think that's something that would be cognizant of as well.
So the financial component is a big one, and I won't be there next Saturday, unfortunately away, but I imagine it's going to come up. So we probably should be prepared for it. And there's a lot to it. I mean, I spoke about it at a previous meeting, to go back 14 years ago, when there certainly was a need, in my opinion, to build a middle school here in North Smithfield. And it went to the bond for the 3rd time and passed by 33 votes. So it's a tough sell, and we need to have all our financial ducks in a row. Unfortunately, this is a great facility. I haven't seen the whole thing yet. I haven't been past this room, bathrooms maybe, but looks like a pretty nice facility we're in here now. That wasn't without controversy, and that controversy continues. So we need to be aware of the fact that there are going to be many, well, unfortunately, I'll say it, many naysayers that we can't spend a dime. I say, I don't know if we can spend a dime. I asked the town administrator here a couple of weeks ago, put him on the spot. It was probably the wrong thing to do, but I did it and asked him where we were as far as what we own, where we stand. And I know when this facility, the Wishy Annex and the school, the high school, went out to bond, they put a number on it before it went to bond, and they kind of filled it up, filled the number, and it didn't work so great, in my opinion, at all. We really need to know, and that should be, maybe Jeff, you can have a conversation with the finance department of where we stand as far as bond indebtedness goes, and what bond counsel, if the finance director could have that information and probably provide it, feels we can handle as a town. It may be $20 million, maybe $2 million. But I think in the course of the entire discussion, it's important for us to have at least that information to be able to work with. Not that we own it or the town owns it, but at least to have that basic information.
And I know in past projects that I've worked on outside of this town, a lot of times we have gone out to cost estimating and then we give the town the number. Rather than working, we might get a range, but initially we'll do a feasibility analysis, similar to what we're doing with Weston and Sampson. And then that way we figure out not only just the construction cost, but the project cost. And the project cost is what's going to be either put out to bond, voted upon, grant writing, whatnot. So the reason why I've been so hesitant to talk about cost is because we have nothing for Weston and Sampson to give us a cost about. So that's why I think this public charrette is so important, because then we'll get more direction from the public. We'll have a programming discussion so we can kind of start to identify the activities and the rooms that we might need in the existing buildings or a new building. And then the site and building design discussion, that's going to tell us a lot about what the town prefers for materiality. And then with those decisions and those ideas, Weston and Sampson can start to generate, okay, well, if you're looking at option one, which is salvaging all the buildings, it's going to cost in this range. For option B, if you salvage some buildings and build another new building, it's going to cost this range. And if you start with a clean slate, we're going to have option C, and it's going to be in about this range. So, and I think that's why I've been avoiding the money discussion, because the first number that everybody hears, that's going to stick with everybody for the duration of this project. The police station, they already put out a number. They said $16 million for the police station. That number is going to stick with the public from here on out. So I've experienced this many times, whatever the first number people hear, that's what sticks with them. And then they come back to us and say, well, you said it's going to only cost $2 million. And that was on a meeting on July 15th, 2020. And you said it was just going to be $2 million. And that's where they start to get the ammunition, and it starts to fuel the naysayers even more. So that's why I've been, again, so hesitant to say, we know nothing right now, really. So that's why I want Weston and Sampson to do what we've contracted them to do, so then we can present appropriate numbers with inflation and really speak smartly about everything.
But I think point is wonderfully made, no question about it. I mean, I'm in your world, so I know. And they hold it up. But it's fair to say that the average citizen walking in, young, old, is gonna look around and say, of course, there's no budget item or anything that we want here. So, and the tax base is not gonna increase so dramatically that you're gonna be able to fund even the upgrades to buildings to make them both compliant and build them out. So a bond is an inevitability. So we're either going to be getting the concept across that what we're taught, because the last thing you want to do is go through all this. Pay them their money, have them do their due diligence, have the townspeople come and have them walk away either disappointed, disenfranchised, disgruntled. You want them to go away with some grasp of reality that, yeah, we'll hone down the wish list, we'll revise the survey to reflect some of the comments that we get on Saturday. But we need to talk about the reality that anything of significance is going to require a bond. So if they need to either reject that out of hand and say bulldoze it and sell it, or no, we get that, we appreciate you being honest with us, and we now tell us how much you think the bond, and then Jeff, that's where, I'm just playing from their point of view. We should be straightforward and say, folks, no matter what we do, the word bond has to be in the discussion, and if we're not prepared to do that, then this committee's work will be facilitated because it will be, well, bulldoze it and sell it for the highest.
Yeah.
And whether that's received or not, that's the reality. If we can't pay for the bond, then all the great work of all the volunteers and the paid professionals means nothing.
Yeah.
Because it's just another plan. And then we've still got real estate sitting there aging, which needs to be dealt with.
Yeah.
So that's the only reason I was pushing.
Yeah, and please don't misconstrue what I said. I'm not saying we put a number.
No,
on it.
exactly.
Right, I personally would like to know how big the bucket could be, that's all.
And I think, Tom, I'm gonna put you on the spot too, but he has been kind of starting to look at grant opportunities as well to see if there are places where we can do matching funds such as a Champlin grant. So even if we come up with half and then Champlin comes up with the other half, but the way he had explained it to me is that we at least need to have a definitive plan and definitive costs of how much things are going to be, so.
I will say that they're looking at, our responses that we got, there's an appetite for this. And I don't think that anybody that filled that out and said that they want to see something there did that without understanding it's going to cost money. Question is how much, and if that number comes back wrong, they might change their mind. But, I think if there was one takeaway from this month-and-a-half long survey process for me, it's that, there's a desire to do something that's gonna cost some money.
So if I had filled out that survey, not being up to me, if I had filled out that survey, I think what if I showed up, what I want to see was a recap of the survey results, where everybody wants to see, right? To everybody's point that made, what could be there, what have you done in other areas outside of Rhode Island or even in Rhode Island? And then a couple different scenarios, without even cost, right? Using the existing buildings based upon the survey results, right? Here's what you could have, here's what you couldn't have. A mixed use, like maybe a few buildings and then new structures, here's what you could have, here's what you couldn't have, and obviously the blank slate. Right, and then maybe you go back without even throwing figures on it. And you could probably assume people would realize that this is gonna cost a lot more, and this is probably gonna cost a lot less. Maybe we resurvey folks to say, A, B, or C. Right, and then we can get a sense of what people's appetite are for magnitude of spend. And if everybody says C, like, blank slate, I think that's a good indication of people's appetite to take on, some more costs and put it out for bonds.
So I'll just add something. So just earlier this week, town council approved the funds and the contract to redo the turf at the high school, as well as the track, as well as, in the near, not too distant future, a throwing cage. So I think it goes back to, we know it needs to be done. We're approving the investment dollars to get it done. But we're also looking at it as, well, what can we do in order to bring in revenue through that investment? And it made that whole process, that whole exchange between the school committee and the town council and the residents of North Smithfield, look at that whole process and say, you know what, it needed to be done. We have the money. We're going to be using it as an investment because now we're going to be getting dollars coming in. And we're going to spend a little bit more money in order to get that investment, which are the throwing cages and redoing the track itself. So I think, again, I think if we keep that in mind, and we're going to be putting in a concession stand with bathrooms.
So Steve, let me ask, did you face any opposition at all? Was there any discussion around
There was
the cost? Was there any?
nope, nothing.
Great.
Because again, we had a plan to say, we're not just putting up this capital for our own sake, but we're looking at it, what's our ROI? And what are we gonna get in return as a town? And I think if you go into it with that mindset, it's much more easily able to swallow when you're throwing out a figure of whatever in the form of a loan.
I could just add to that discussion, I think you have to understand, the school department had a surplus because of COVID funds.
Right.
They had about $1 million. You guys approved spending that $1 million. So it wasn't like they had to draw it out, there was an extra surplus because of COVID. So that was the reason, and there was no cost to the community.
That's the magic number there. That's the magic number there.
exactly. Just to be fair.
And I think Steve makes a very good point with the return on investment.
Absolutely.
I've worked on projects where, it's been a public project, but it's now a rentable facility. And, people can have weddings or activities or have their group sessions, and whoever wants to pay, the $50 an hour to rent out the space, they have the ability to do that. So I think that's another good thing that we could mention, that for part of the programming exercise that we say, okay, well, obviously we want to have this flexible space. How can we be able to market that and have outside groups come and rent it? How could we make this flexible space become a robotics lab or something that's unique to the northern Rhode Island, so that other people are going to want to come up here, use our space because it's state of the art, or we're offering something that another town isn't. Because that's what's going on a lot of, is all the towns around us are offering something that we don't have right now. So we're losing all of that revenue. So if we could outperform Lincoln, Smithfield, Cumberland, Oxbridge, Blackstone, Woonsocket, the list of places where people have gone outside of town, if we can get that back and then some, I think that's going to be a very major point that we should be making.
One other note for Weston and Sampson, maybe, I didn't see it on that agenda. Think about it, I'm just throwing it out there. It might be beneficial, even though we're early in the game, early in the evolution of this, to give some distant schedule to the average resident who attends. What should be their expectation? That design and will chew up a good 2 years between design review, municipal review, bonding discussions, funding discussions, whatever terms we want to use, with the expectation that we're looking at a window of 1 to 3 years for construction to start. I think it's important, then, yes, you're right, Jeff. They would hold that number to us as much as they would the 12 or the 7. But they're due something, some reference point to say, yeah, our professionals in consultation would say that it's reasonable to say that this project from beginning to the time the key is turned the first time is, you got to expect 3 to 4 or whatever their considered opinions are. I think it's going to help.
Yeah.
Because you don't want people walking away with the expectation that was in 6 months, I didn't see anything. What are you guys doing? These are,
Yeah.
you know, and then we also need the follow-up survey, which is going to be critical to throw it back and say, well, this, many of you probably came, that's why you're getting the survey back again. What did you think? But I think people want to leave. We want them to leave on the highest note they can, with the idea that somebody heard them and they have an idea of how long this thing might take, which may alter their mind. And they may think, well, you know, if we have time to think or we don't have time. One or the other.
Jeff, I got a point to make. You know, I'm hearing about bonding. You know, if you phase this project properly, someone threw out a 20-year master plan. You could even do it probably a 10 years realistic. But if we just focus on one building, let's say the big building, and it needs to do, you know, it needs an HVAC unit, needs mold abated, maybe the kitchen demoed. You know, that's I don't see that it's millions of dollars. I mean, there's no reason why we can't, you know, go after some Champlin money and you split that 50-50 and you have a package that you're ready to bid in the fall. And you're not bonding something that's, even if it's like 600,000, you cut it in half. You know, I would think the town can handle that. You're not going to want to bond that. So that's something to consider, you know? And I think that we're not putting this before the planning board, in my opinion. This gets exempted through site plan review, through the exemption clause. If anything, we're going to be taking buildings down. It's doesn't need to go through the 2-year pain of a planning and zoning review. So I'm just throwing that out there.
Thanks, Tom.
So could we, I don't want to derail this discussion if there's more to be said, but just some practical questions that you had kind of outstanding here I wanted to address. I'm curious who from the committee is going to be at this thing. I know that I will.
Yeah.
I want to,
Okay. I'll be there.
Around 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock on the 24th.
I mean, it would be nice if people could be there at 8:30-ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tony? Oh, yeah, you said you were gonna be. And we'll follow up with Scott too.
I can probably get you tables. So we'll handle, I'll borrow them from the scouts.
Oh, okay, great. I mean, there are plenty of tables actually in the buildings, but I don't know if it's some.
Yeah, I think there might be some more coordination efforts between us and DPW, and I know I have been a pain in Paul's side about a sound system. So we are locating a sound system. I believe we are looking at utilizing the EMAs. That was the last email that I got from Paul. And I was also going to say, or request if there are folks on the committee that have like a 10 by 10 tent. So at least, you know, the speaker system can be covered. We were gonna request that members that are joining us bring their picnic chairs, similar to a concert on the common sort of situation. My other concern is, you know, as everybody else's is the weather. And I'm trying to think in my mind, how could we either one, delay the whole situation and have a rain date, or B, it's a stone throw from Halliwell to here. So I know it's better to have the meeting on site, but if we need to have a quick walkthrough for everybody and then we have the presentations here, I don't know how many people are going to be interested in coming. I'm not, that's one of the biggest problems I've had with, you know, the survey and the rest of the town is trying to get a finger up on the pulse of how many people want their voice to be heard. How many people are like, yeah, okay, so what's happening? And then some of the other people that are just like, yeah, okay, whatever. So, and I don't know in your experience how you try to figure that out, but it's not like I was at Little League games every Saturday morning and people are rushing up to talk to me about things. I don't know if that's been the experience of everybody else on the board, if people have been running up to you and.
Actually, yeah, that happened at a few little league games.
I think it's a tough one because it's not a critical issue. It's not a school, you know, it's something, it's not a building that's been talked about for years and years, where this project, or a water treatment plant or something like that, that's significant to the infrastructure. This is kind of are you interested or are you not? You may have no opinion at all. I mean, if you took a quarter of the survey participants, that would be what, is it 200? No. 100. So, I mean, I would think that maybe the expectation should be to have the cafeteria, the middle school, as the fallback position, because you don't want to come here and we don't want to embarrass ourselves and say, well, we didn't think enough of you cared to attend, even though that wouldn't be fair, but that would be the interpretation. So if we go to the middle school, at least no matter how many people show, you're never going to fill the cafeteria. If it was, and you can just list it, if the school committee agrees, you just say, you know, you can post it the day before and just decide if it says 50% chance of rain, you're just going to make a decision.
25% chance.
Back then, yeah, well, that's, yeah.
You can't
get tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow. 24th.
Jeff, do you think the meeting that was there in March of 2020, I think it was, do you think that's a good possible baseline?
There were,
40 to 50 people, maybe?
yeah, I think you get more of a turnout for this because we've been advertising.
Yeah.
We've been advertising.
Maybe we do a walkthrough and then the site walkthrough and plan for the worst. Use either the middle school, cafeteria, high school, or
Yeah.
and then just move everybody over there. That way you can cover.
Good plan.
Speaking of advertising, I see that Lauren Clem is on the line, and I hope that she'll be on the lookout for a note from us to publicize this in the Valley Breeze. Thank you.
Who doesn't?
You're on the line, Lauren. I think that's great. I think I can reach out to the superintendent. Do we go to the school committee or the superintendent for the use of the superintendent? Okay. Maybe Tom and I can coordinate that effort, and because I know we've had planning board meetings up there before, so we can coordinate that effort. And get that squared away. The only disadvantage that puts us at is that we're not on site. People aren't, when we're talking about it, we're not physically there to kind of just point out. I mean, we can have pictures, we can have the maps and everything, but so we'll hope for a sunny day. We'll get that coordinated.
Yeah, and then obviously if we're moving on site, that's gonna impact the overall agenda and the timing, we'll have to factor in that, so. And if we have, 30 to 40 people, then I'm likely to recruit you as facilitators too, just to make sure that, we have people at every table.
Do you guys need to be there for the walkthrough? Could we handle that and then meet you at the site? So you can give your time.
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna do idea boards or like kind of map it out, I would want to get out there early and get that set up, but yeah, we can do that. Let you take over the site tour and we can go set up someplace else. That would work.
As far as, I'm just looking at our kind of set of responsibility list here. I would say we can certainly provide the sign-in sheets. That should be an easy thing for us to do.
We can handle that.
Okay.
Yeah, any of the written stuff, any of the markers, paper, all of that is, we have that stuff.
Okay. As far as display boards and photographs / video, What were you envisioning more for the display boards? Is it kind of like an easel where we're writing down ideas sort of situation, or?
Yeah, and that, again, we would bring that too.
Okay.
I didn't put WSC there, but we would bring that. And any displays we create, aerial photographs, posters that we'll also create.
Okay.
Basically all the stuff we'll create.
Okay,
So.
great.
I put photographs and video just as a reminder to myself, it's always helpful for the long-term process to take pictures of people participating, because people also forget that they have the opportunity to participate, and so to the degree that we can show that there was an event, it helps.
Lauren, do you hear that? You need to bring your camera.
What was that? Sorry.
We need documentation of people that are attending this meeting, so photographs would be encouraged.
Unless nobody shows up, then please don't take any pictures.
Got it. Jeff, I'm actually I'll send you an email after this, but I was gonna check in with you afterwards. Once you guys have all the details finalized for that Saturday event, we'll definitely want to get something in the paper, so.
Great, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Everybody feeling comfortable? Do you have any questions for us? Are we missing anything? You've gone through this process a lot more than we have, so.
Yeah, I haven't done it quite so like tight, so it may feel a little hectic, so, you know, we'll have to meditate and calm. But yeah, I will try to get you, the presentation to review, on, like, certainly by Wednesday. I'll give you, by end of Monday, some updates on the assessment, an updated schedule. I will refine the agenda, and I will set up
Sure.
as well.
So, once we get a presentation, how we can address that, because we aren't meeting until our July 24th meeting, is that I'll send that out to the committee members, individually respond to me, and then if there's any comments, I'll get that back over to Carolyn.
So just will we, assume that's what you're just saying, will we see their assessment report prior to that Saturday?
You will get, I hope, I'm reluctant to promise, I will get a draft report at least of the buildings 10, 11, and 7. It might exclude electrical, but it might be a little rough, but you'll definitely get the gist of it.
Prior.
Yeah, I've been told sometime next week, and I'll confirm that more on our.
The only other two things that I'd like is, again, if committee sees fit, is it would be nice in my mind if you could use other projects, as many have mentioned.
Yeah.
Give them an order of magnitude as to schedule of how long this process likely and normally takes. And then I still think, if you agree, it's not critical, that if you put a code on each structure, indicate its most viability of being reused.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be able to do that for Saturday.
But if we have talking, as long as somebody is able to articulate, if the question comes from the public,
Yeah,
as long as one of you can articulate, well, yeah, we're, That's
I'll say
okay.
our preliminary assessment is showing X, Y, and
because
Z.
you know
Yeah.
it's going to come. So I think those two things would be,
Mhm.
we're prepared to deal with that. I think that would be appreciated by the public.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Unless anybody has anything else for Carolyn, thank you for coming out this evening. Nice to see you in person and not on the screen.
It's nice to see what's in the field.
Without the race.
So, all right.
Thank you.
So, next up for discussion, consideration, and action, the results of our initial survey. And I'm going to hand that to Chris.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Carl, yeah. 1 second here. Any chance we could make that a little bit bigger? Here we go.
Oh, yeah, actually fine. Working on 2 computers, so,
It's true, true multitasking.
yes.
All right, so, we talked about, the preliminary results of this halfway through the fielding. The survey was open for about 5 or 6 weeks. And honestly, not a lot has changed from last time, other than, the influx of paper surveys, which we saw a spike in people talking about senior center, which we'll go through, but this is going to feel pretty similar to the last time we talked about it. So in total, we received 441 responses, which was more than I was expecting. First question we asked was, oops, looks like we're a little bit behind. First question we asked was, should the town keep or sell the property? And just like last time, overwhelmingly, people said that they want to keep it. We got a slight delay between my screen and what everyone else is seeing. So 90% of the respondents said that the town should keep the property. Second question we asked was, what would you like to see from the property? And like we did last time, you're going to see a word cloud, which is kind of, a look at the different things and keywords that people were mentioning. So some things really jump out here. The biggest thing is senior center, community center, playground, park. You can go through this on your own afterwards. I won't read every word on the screen, but you can kind of see there are some common themes here. So, sprinkled throughout this, I tried to formulate some key takeaways. So the first thing that you're going to see is that our senior residents are loud and clear here. And 41% of everyone that responded to this thing said they would like to see a senior center, specifically mentioned a senior center in some form. So, there's a real appetite to have that in town.
I have Laurel Woods in every single one.
Yes.
I have a question, and do you have any number on how many of the respondents were from senior facilities, Meadows?
We did collect addresses from all of the respondents. I know when I did the preliminary results, I kind of mapped them out so we could actually visually see that. I didn't do it for this time just because it's a little bit tricky to do. But it is something that we could look at and kind of see where those pockets in town that we're seeing certain themes like a senior center or a community center or whatever. I'll get back to you on that for next time. So in addition, 29% of everyone that responded mentioned the community center or some type of multi-generational space. And then 18% on top of that, they didn't specifically say community center or all ages space, but they mentioned some type of use that it was implied that it was, for all ages. So the next slide, you're going to see, I took the folks that mentioned both a senior center and a community center, and I kind of looked at some of the common themes that they were talking about. So among those folks who talked about both, they are looking for things like playground, meeting spaces that could facilitate all kinds of different things, classes, different types of entertainment like concerts and theater, nature trails and walking trails. Gardens and pools and all of those type of things, which are pretty common themes among the wider respondent pool anyway. So similar to last time, a lot of people simply said senior center or community center, and they didn't really elaborate on what that means to them. So we can infer that from some of the other responses, but I think part of what we want to try and drill into at the public charrette is, what do people actually want from this, and what do they mean when they say they want a senior center or a community center? What are the activities they're looking for?
Exactly. I think that's going to be one of our very pointed questions that we need to ask. Like, a community center could be a litany of various things that are contained within a community center. So what is it exactly that the town is looking at?
Yep. So just like last time, people, they mentioned all sorts of recreation opportunities and the desire for them. So the top thing that was mentioned often is a playground or some type of just, general recreation space. Open space and a park where people could go and have a picnic or just hang out. Walking trails are mentioned by 7% of people. Additional sports fields in a sports complex, a number of folks mentioned a dog park, swimming pool, splash pad, all common themes among a number of respondents. So generally one of the big themes is that people want places to connect with their neighbors and kind of grow that community feeling. And some of the specific ways that manifests, it's gonna be on this next slide. So community garden, 7% of people mentioned that. And I think, I would imagine that some of that is related to the news of the community garden that went in there. People, it's top of mind, they're thinking of that. Arts, culture, concerts, that was another common one. Town and community events, people mentioned this in a number of ways. They want to see the town hold more events and they want a space that can facilitate it. Farmers markets, fairs, carnivals, food trucks, all that type of stuff. Those were all in there too. Meeting rooms and classes, those could almost be combined, but I broke them out here. So, people want space to go and, do co-working or get their group together to talk. And people, they want to see spaces for classes, like talk about that later. But and rental space, a few folks mentioned, throwing a birthday party and having a good space that they could rent to do it. So on the next slide, some of the classes that were mentioned, people wanted to see, and I put this on here because it might impact how you think about the spaces. So vocational training, chorus classes, yoga, sustainability classes, somebody mentioned, business education. So kind of continuing education classes for adults and kids alike. And then on the next slide, some of the specific events that folks were talking about, and this is somewhat duplicative of a couple slides ago: farmers markets, concerts, arts festivals, food trucks, someone mentioned plant sales, and then just more generally, just flexible event spaces like, covered pavilions outdoors where you could really do anything. So in looking at this and kind of trying to make sense of it, my takeaway was that, people, they desire flexible multi-use spaces and then purpose-built dedicated areas. So that's things like having a commercial kitchen, art spaces that can get messy, music spaces that might be, have sound dampening, co-working and small business incubation spaces. So a few folks mentioned, having places where they could go and have a little cafe or, have access to some quality Wi-Fi and some quiet meeting rooms that they could do some work in and all that kind of thing. And then just like last time, some folks mentioned having municipal services utilize the space. So, we talked about this and kind of the non-desire for our police department to move to Halliwell. A few folks mentioned, possibly putting an annex there or something. I think one thing that we'll want to do here is actually reach out to the police chief directly and just ask him about this and see if this is even something that should be in the mix. Because my sense is that they're not really interested in having a presence at Halliwell, other than keeping an eye on things. So I think that can be one of our takeaways from this and one of our action items, to reach out to them, directly ask.
And I think it would also probably be worth to see where the MBRTF is with their studies with the police station, because I know they've been going through a studies process with either reusing the existing building with an addition, or a brand new building on the site that they currently are at. So
few people are, worried about school space and where we're gonna fit kids, and they want to see it reused. Food pantry was something that was commonly mentioned, new library, and then just, moving DPW or other town needs there, which I don't know that we need this space, but, people are mentioning it. So then some other things that were commonly brought up is the idea of having daycare and youth camps there, whether it's summer camps, after school camps, that kind of thing. Housing, and specifically senior and affordable housing was mentioned a few different times. Commercial, retail, industrial, so a few people said, put at least, segment some space for, a business to try and offset the cost of any developments that's done there. Some people just say knock down the buildings entirely and put it in an office park. So early learning, preschool type thing, and then a few people mentioned whatever happens there, have some type of memorial to Halliwell School. One great idea was having a plaque somewhere that listed all of the teachers that taught there through the years, which I thought would be nice. Maybe out by the tree that a few people said that should not be knocked down. So that might be a great spot to have some type of memorial to the history of the building. And then 3% of people specifically mentioned whatever's being done there to generate revenue for the town and help lower their taxes, help offset some of their costs. So then our third question of the survey was, what do you not want to see at the property? And the majority of folks who responded said they do not want to see, actually it's not the majority, you'll see in a second, but they don't want to see housing, condos, or any type of private business on the property. So you can see there's kind of a conflict in some cases between what people do want to see and what people don't want to see. So 29% of people specifically said they don't want to see any type of industrial usage or new Dunkin' Donuts there or anything like that. And then a number of people specifically mentioned not wanting to see housing or condos on the site. Nearly 10% of folks said they don't want to see the site deteriorate or just sit there going unused. And a few people mentioned crime, and I think that that was actually some of the earlier responses that talked about that, and that was shortly after there was the vandalism on site. So I think that's another thing that was sort of top of mind. But people just want to see the site either being used or those 10% of folks want to see it sold. They don't want it just rotting away. So then some other common themes that we saw people don't want: a police or public safety complex. Solar was mentioned a lot. Solar farm, private usage, a single use or single audience facility. They said that they want it to be community focused. A few people actually mentioned the senior center, and then a handful of folks said no more sports fields. We have enough of them in town. And they wanted to see other things on the site. So I spent a lot of time looking at all of these. Probably between the preliminary analysis and this, I've probably gone through all of these responses 10 times each, maybe 15 hours putting together these reports and just thinking about this stuff. So some of my big takeaways, and everybody in the committee might look at these responses and have different thoughts or opinions, but this is what the data said to me. Yeah, go ahead, John.
Before you jump in, after this meeting, I am going to be, there's a PDF of all of the responses, all 441 that I'm going to be sharing with the whole committee and sharing with Donna, so she can put that on the website so that everybody can have access and see every response that we've received, as well as Chris's presentation. So I didn't want to steal any of Chris's thunder, so I wanted to kind of give him the opportunity to show everything to us first, and then we'll be posting that afterwards. Great.
And to your question, Tony, I think we're going to share them publicly without addresses. That was more for us to verify that people are kind of coming to us from town. But for the committee, we can share addresses in case you're interested in seeing where certain responses are coming from. So, major takeaway number one for me is that residents are excited about this project and the possibilities that the property offers. You're gonna see that in a second. There it is. So the fact that we got 441 responses, I think speaks volumes. It's a lot. I work in an industry that does surveys, and it's difficult to get 400 people to respond to anything unless you are either paying them or it's something that they actually care about. So in our case, it's obviously the latter. You know, this site means a lot to people, and they all have an opinion, which is great. So it seems to me that there's overwhelming support to do something for the community with the site. What that something is a little bit more amorphous, and certainly on us to help, you know, figure that out in conversations with the public. Like I said, everybody's got an opinion, everyone's got ideas about what this might be. I joked earlier that, you know, people have come up to me and started talking about what should be on the site at Little League games, and that has actually happened on multiple days. And I love to hear it. And we're seeing that in these surveys. You know, everybody has ideas. And I think even the folks that say they want a community center and nothing else, or a senior center and they don't say anything else, there's substance behind that. And it's going to be up to us, with help from Weston and Sampson, to try and figure out what they mean by that, because I'm sure that they know in some form what that means. We just have to extract it. So I think residents are interested in ways to supplement existing offerings in our town. So a lot of the ideas that we're seeing, they are things that North Smithfield doesn't currently offer. Whether it's a senior center, you know, whether it's a pool, a dog park, or, you know, a space to have those outdoor concerts at farmers markets. It's really new opportunities that people are looking for here. They're not looking for, you know, bigger and better, something that we already have. So 441 responses. My takeaway is that there's a real desire to turn Halliwell into a community center that offers a variety of activities for all residents, and do it in a way that kind of fills those gaps in offerings that our town currently has. So that's it.
Excellent, excellent summary. I like the idea of a daycare down there. Think about it, if you had a daycare center in one of those buildings, when there's other activities on, people with kids, they could drop them off at the day. That could be a very functional part of that, both for the community and as a revenue generator for the daycare. I also love the idea of dog park.
So Bob, I think, you know, your excitement about that after seeing this goes back to what Frank mentioned earlier. And kind of the ordering for our public charrette, where when people see some of this stuff and how other people are talking about it, because my wife did the same thing. When I was kind of sharing this with her, she saw a dog park, she said, oh, that's a great idea. It kind of gets people thinking in a way that maybe they hadn't been before, whether it's ideas that other residents have shared, whether it's ideas about other, you know, community centers in other towns, just giving them a sense of what's possible can maybe, you know, help them.
We should start off the charrette with this kind of presentation, just to let people know what's out there.
Honestly, Chris, I think you should do it.
Yeah, you do a great job.
I think, absolutely, you should.
You should present.
I think you should present this, and I think when you're, mimic what you just did tonight, and then hand it off to Weston and Sampson, and then have that final slide.
Well, this meeting is being recorded, so we can just play it.
That's true. I want the real people.
So I'd be happy to, yeah. And
Honestly, I think you did the work, you should take credit for it, you should do it. And I think that closing slide is a perfect transition for Weston and Sampson to say, hey, this is what Chris presented, and here's what you guys said. Here's a few projects that look and feel and encompass everything you said. And it may get people thinking, oh yeah, right?
Excellent. No, super.
So then I think that's a good kind of roadmap into concept, you know, examples, and then reality. And I think we go from concepts to examples, and I think from example to reality. is
Well,
not-
you can use substitute the word desire.
Right, yeah,
This is
desire,
representative of
yeah,
desire.
example and reality. So if this is what you, this is an example of something you want. Reality is it's probably gonna be, $3 signs in a picture, right? If you want to maintain all of it, it's probably $1 sign. But then the list of what you can't have, or what on your wish list, or can't accomplish, is probably longer than versus what is the, $3 sign picture. So honestly, I think you should, unless you guys agree.
Well, no, I think that, when she was here, I think she was just kind of pulling ideas from the air. And I think that if we started off with her first and then showed that, or didn't show this, then I think, people's head might be spinning and saying, well, didn't we just fill out the survey? So what this might do ahead of her speaking is she might be able to hone in, right, where she might say, oh yeah, dog park, yeah, we have a town that we actually put in a dog park, and here's was the overwhelming response. Or like a childcare, they might say, yeah, this one town did it, and they have an overwhelming amount of, revenue that's coming in from that, or whatever.
Jeff, you should make sure you send his whole slide presentation to her, so she can see what's gonna happen, or what potentially could happen.
And I think I'm on the same page as Chris. I was watching these responses come in. And I'm on the other side of the table now. Usually I'm where Weston and Sampson is. And I was so ready to grab an aerial view, start tracing out ideas with all of these various things that people were mentioning and saying, we could incorporate it over here and incorporate it over there. So for me, I had to take a minute to step back, because I was like, these are all great ideas. Where can we fit them? Where can we put them? And I'm like, wait, no, that's not my responsibility. It's now, I'm on the other side of the table. It's time for me to take a step back and let the community really do what they do best, is bringing forth these ideas. So and this is just the initial survey. So, I mean, I can see the excitement from everybody here. So I can only imagine, this process as we move along, how much more excitement is going to build and how much more energy this movement's going to really start to gain. So I think this is, for me, I'm seeing this as a great success for us, because we've gotten so much information right off the bat.
The other 2 points important. One was, I think what we're gonna find is that the way we memorialize the school, if you will, is by keeping the largest structure. It seems fairly logical that none of the classrooms, maybe one might serve some tangential use for build workout, but it would appear that we're gonna end up incorporating the 2 largest structures by adding transition buildings to them to generate this community, senior, youth, multifunctional facility. And then there seems to be a great emphasis for outdoor related activities, which would be for the food trucks for Friday nights and Saturdays, and places for the kids and the dogs and all that. But the other thought that came, and I think that's gotta be where we're gonna be going with this thing. We're gonna keep the 2 most functional buildings and give us the most versatility. But and I think the other thing is, what I was thinking in regard to you may want to be able to make sure we can articulate exactly what this committee is tasked with, so that they understand what we're actually supposed to do. And then you may want to, at some point, be prepared, if it comes up, to explain how the ultimate decision would be made. And if we don't know it, we just say we don't know, it's too early in the process. But all I'm saying is be prepared that someone from the floor will invariably want to say, yeah, Jimmy had a great idea, Joe. Who's going to eventually say what is the best idea? Just go by this survey every time and that majority rules. That's going to be a question. So as long as you're prepared in consultation with town council, so that you're speaking of one mind and one voice, that we don't want to give anybody false expectations or too much hope. We want to make sure they understand that this is an evolutionary process. And we may not even understand how that's going. So, and that's just another thing out there that we should keep for clarity.
Okay, does anybody else have any comments on the results of our initial survey?
I think we should all agree, I guess, in principle, that we want Chris to go first. Is that, should we make a
I'll
motion
second
or is
that.
it just?
Well, we should ask him. If he wants to do it.
He said. It was a
It's
big
actually a
smile.
job not to invest.
Once we approve it, it's approved.
Yeah.
So if you're good with it, I think we'd all like to do it.
Yeah, I have no problem.
Because you were enthusiastic. You're enthusiastic, James.
Okay.
You're enthusiastic.
Great. So, yeah, I'll work with Carolyn to make sure that we just revise this agenda a little bit to what we discussed, and I'll disperse that to the committee. Then this will essentially be the agenda for our, that gets posted for the meeting anyways.
So will we have an outdoor screen, I'm assuming, to present
Yes.
this?
You're gonna need a screen.
I thought we were gonna do this.
Those are ranks, right?
So maybe you do that either way. Maybe we, like you said, even if it's a nice day, maybe it's more functional to walk through
Yeah.
and then go back to the nice comfort of the cafeteria with air conditioning.
You know-
depending on-
you know,
That's
that's-
a video available. It might make sense.
I honestly think that that's probably gonna be our best bet, because I have my list of things to do, and I was actually gonna call our town solicitor, David Biozzi, to see what the protocol is for advertising this as, because we're gonna be obviously advertising this as a public meeting. What's the protocol for having a meeting in two different locations and having a rain date? So if we are deciding that we will have the first half hour of the morning be the walkthrough of the site, and then folks can then migrate up to the middle school cafeteria to have our presentation, have the screen, have everything at our disposal. And I think that makes it a little bit easier and doesn't get us into open meeting trouble or anything like that.
Yeah, he'll give you the legal.
Just from my experience, you do have a little bit of flexibility, right? If it's gonna be a public meeting, you advertise it as such. But I've been to public meetings that change venue on the fly. So if you kind of make people aware that, for instance, it's gonna be held outdoors at Halliwell, and we may have to relocate. And you put that in the notice, and then if people go to Halliwell and you decide to move to the middle school, you put a notification up at Halliwell and you say, meeting will reconvene at the middle school at 10:30, whatever. I think based upon my past experience, that covers the basis. So if you do that ahead of time, you may well be safe.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think we should say there'll be a review of Halliwell from 9 to 9:30, and then the meeting will convene at the middle school cafeteria.
Well, that's fine too, if you
I
decide
just
that's
think
what
we
you
ought
want to do.
I think we ought to just do that because
Yeah.
I think the screen is too important, and the presentations are too important to not have them.
Well, technically, they're both still meetings, because
Correct,
technically, the three of us,
Right.
any of our three cannot,
Correct.
together over there. So technically, the meeting is being adjourned for 10-minute transportation to the.
Okay, yeah, I'm.
The legalese, whatever it is.
That's,
That way, Weston and Sampson doesn't need to eat a half hour of a 2-hour contract. And
Yeah, I'm not too worried. They haven't been holding us strict time on the side there, so. Usually there's some flexibility.
she brought it up, so I wasn't sure if she was thinking about it.
Usually there's a little bit of a comparison.
Should do we need to vote on that, or is it just a general consensus that that's? what-
I think it's just a general consensus. We'll start the meeting at Halliwell at 9. Have it for a half hour tour, people can walk through, reconvene at, do we want to say 9:45, or do we want to say 10 o'clock to give plenty of people to,
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock, okay. So why don't we follow that? Well, 9 to 9:30 at Halliwell.
Yeah, actually, that might help too. If people have been to Halliwell already, don't feel the need to go there, and I just want to go to that 10 o'clock session too. Yeah, that makes sense.
And then that also takes care of the refreshments part, so people can stop at Dunkin' or Coffee and Cream, pick up whatever they need to on the way over. Humboldt Farms, Little General, there's lots of places.
Very nice.
All right, unless anybody has anything else, we can go on to our next item, which is for discussion, consideration, and action and progress of outreach by committee members. I know everyone's we had budget season to compete with a few boards last time. We've actually gotten on some agendas for July meetings, so just kind of an update from everybody on their respective assignments. If anybody has them.
I spoke to a girl on the youth, what was that?
Juvenile.
Juvenile hearing board, thank you, juvenile hearing board. And I told her, there'd be opportunities for them to, if we have a community center there, and the kids who need to do some community service work, I thought that's a good idea. She's gonna bring that up at the next meeting, and, oh, Tony, was your wife a crowd? Yeah.
Yeah, you said this last week.
Right, exactly. At the tables? Oh, that's right. Yeah, good. And I talked to the school committee, they haven't asked me to show up.
They haven't asked you to show up?
I think if my wife's enough.
I was gonna say, you haven't in on that.
I can give an update. Jeff and I actually joined the Parks and Rec meeting last week after this.
Yeah.
Went pretty well. We had about a half an hour discussion with all of them. They're all familiar with our mission, so we kind of had an open discussion with them through the lens of Parks and Rec, what they're interested in seeing at the site. I don't have my notes in front of me, but it was a good discussion. And it was good, I think, to establish the formal relationship, because I think that they're going to be an important partner going forward in helping us to think about management of whatever gets done at the site, both temporary and kind of long-term. We were on the agenda for the Conservation Commission meeting a few nights ago. I was unable to attend, but I submitted kind of a list of discussion items to them. And I haven't heard back yet, but I was hoping they could either take some notes or join us tonight or at a future meeting to kind of have that discussion. And then next week, I'm joining the Arts Committee, Arts Board, one of those, to talk to them about, whatever. We'll see where that goes, but we're gonna have a discussion.
That's great. Tom, are you still there?
Yes, sir.
Did you stay on for the park with the Conservation Commission?
I'm sorry, Jeff?
Did you stay for the Conservation Commission meeting? I saw that you were on for a little bit, but were you able to listen in on their conversation about Halliwell?
Yeah, they didn't go into it. I think they even tabled that discussion. I do attend all their meetings.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Yep.
I'll follow up with them, and I think they meet once a month, so might be something that we talk next month.
Does anybody else have any updates?
It's been a busy zoning couple of weeks, and I was on vacation, so I'll do my audit for the fire. Didn't know my ears with that stuff.
Yep.
I had reached out to Lafferty via their website, kind of sent a message portal, never heard back. So I'm going to stop at that this week, just see him in person.
Yeah, I think the administrative assistant there is Tappa. I think she might be able to. And even Captain Mercatelli was also pretty helpful too. So actually, any member of the police force is pretty helpful. So
I've spoken to a couple of guys that know, based upon their opinion, they think it makes sense to keep it where it is. However, obviously not right, cheap.
yeah,
But based upon their estimations, post price in 46, people get a heat map in terms of where their activity is. I think primarily be within proximity to usage is now, so that would make sense. But again. somebody might-
All right. Nobody else has any other progress? We can just keep this as a rolling item. So for our next meetings, we are looking at July 24th, which will be our public charrette at 9 a.m. And then the other two meetings is August 5th and August 19th. The one thing about the August 5th meeting is that it is also a concert on the town gazebo. So I was going to propose to the group that maybe that just be a time where the committee comes and we disperse amongst the community members that show up to the concert, have some discussions with them. If these are folks that didn't attend the public charrette, maybe ask some questions of them, get some ideas, just to get us out into the community a little bit more, as opposed to being behind this table and talking into microphones, and we just get to interact more with folks. So we can have a brief recap of our meeting from the charrette on August 5th, but then I would say we adjourn and then just kind of go out and enjoy the music and talk with some folks, and weather permitting, if that's something that the committee sounds like they have an appetite for.
I have a question, I don't know if it matters or not, but, are you gonna have a quorum for sure at the 24th?
Considering that we won't be voting on anything, I would think that
It doesn't matter?
because we're not taking action on any item that's gonna be before us, so I wouldn't be concerned about that.
Okay.
I'm not sure. There's a memorial service in my church for a gentleman who passed away. I think it's at 10 o'clock, but if it's later, I'll be there for part of the meetings. I guess, part of it.
I have that email. I have that email.
Really?
Yeah.
What time is the memorial service? That's what I want to know.
Calling hours, it's at the church in 10 to 11.
10 to 11, it is 10. And then the memorial service.
All right.
Does that have any impact on other members of the community?
It's just that you want to say the foundation church.
No, I don't know. You guys.
No, they won't that. They won't that.
Yeah,
So
so,
sorry.
but yeah, because we're not taking any specific action, we're not recommending to town council anything, I don't see, when I have my phone call, well, I mean, I guess I don't have to. I will call Dave just to confirm about the two locations, but I'll ask him about that same situation, but I think,
I mean, to the letter of the law, we would be in violation, to the letter of the law. But with all of what you just said, the common good is being served. It would be foolhardy for somebody to insist that we not have it. Because, that would be, the whole reason for the rule is to benefit the town, so it would make no sense, even though it would be wise for you to make sure he understands.
I'll confirm and clarify that, I will.
So related to a quorum, I'm wondering, Steve, do you have any update on how many folks have applied to fill the vacancy?
Yep, as far as I know, as of yesterday, 2, and then as of today, 3. So a total of 3. The town council members should get a copy of that by tomorrow afternoon to review the applications for Monday's appointment, hopefully.
Thank you.
All right,
Oh, in that regard, if they appoint on Monday, I assume you would bring up to speed whoever this new person is.
Yes.
So that they can come on Saturday and feel part of it.
Certainly. certainly. All right.
Are you gonna have a pre-session with Weston and Sampson for the 24th? I don't like that. I don't know. Doesn't feel tight in terms of how sequencing in terms of.
Yeah.
How it's gonna go.
I think based on this agenda that that Carolyn's provided us, this will be our guideline, but I think based on the items that we've discussed tonight, there's going to be more revisions. And then this will, like I said, this will essentially become our agenda for next Saturday.
No, but I think Frank, you make a very good point. That leave it up to the chair and the coach advice. Just have a quick email, make sure that they receive all of our wishes and that it's.
Yeah, almost like a drive up.
Yep.
This is gonna do this, at this point we transition, you're gonna do this.
Yep, yeah, I think what I'm looking at with like introductory presentation, I'll obviously be introducing the committee and the board, let Carolyn from Weston and Sampson, let everybody know what we've been tasked with from town council. Chris will jump into this. I'm thinking we'll outline the goals for the day. And then Chris can jump into the presentation. People can understand there's gonna be a little bit more finessing of this, but I'll be sharing this with everybody. And like I said, whatever presentation Carolyn brings back to us, I'm gonna share with everybody. I've been trying to make sure that I blind copy everybody, so you know, happen to hit reply all. So if there's any comments, again, just send them back to me and I can feed them back to Weston and Sampson to make sure that they're all heard and addressed.
I think that she mentioned getting back to us by Monday or Tuesday with more information. So maybe Jeff, you and I can plan to just have a quick call with her Wednesday or Thursday to firm up some of these plans, make sure that she heard our notes, which we'll send along, and make sure the agenda looks good.
Yeah, I think we're in good shape. All right. Unless anybody's got anything else, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned at 8:12.